Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Vegan Proteins Muscles by Brussels Radio. My name is Danny.
And I'm 𝐃𝐨𝐬.
And this is episode 132. So, for those of you watching on YouTube, this is a video podcast. And for those of you listening in, the audio is going to sound a little bit different because I am home. But 𝐃𝐨𝐬 is in Florida, and we're doing this over Zoom for the first time ever.
Yes, and this is going to be a really interesting conversation because usually we're right in front of each other. So I feel like just environment being different and what it is, I'm kind of excited for this episode, Danny.
Yeah, so how's Florida, babe?
It is Florida, but it's Satellite Beach. It's Space Coast where I'm at. It's got a vibe. It's got a military/surfer vibe to it. Surfers come in and the waves here are incredible at Satellite Beach. And then you also have all the science behind and the military behind sending everything up into space and all those kinds of logistics. So you kind of catch that in the air. It's just the way it is out here. And my dad lives out here and his girlfriend, and they got some dogs hanging out, right? There's a dog that one of their buddies left with us to hang out overnight. Her name is Effie, and she's just the coolest. And their dog, Cotton, and the two of them are just playing together, and they're working me. They're telling me, I gotta go to the bathroom or this or that. I'm like, okay, you got me. Like, we'll go on some walks together.
Cool. Very cool. So
𝐃𝐿𝐲𝐿 is
gone. My mom is at a wedding in Vermont, and the kids are being picked up from school today by their mom. So I have the house like to myself for at least 3 days, like totally to myself. And I guess I'm pretty excited about it. Right now, all I want to do is sleep. Like, that's it. Because like I just said, I had the kids by myself yesterday and this morning, and I don't usually do the morning routine with the kids. And Desmond wakes up before 5 a.m. So I'm tired right now, but that is not going to stop us from having a good episode. They were super well behaved and adorable. It's just like nobody's that cute at 4:45 in the morning. So anyway, so 𝐃𝐿𝐲 has an outline for this particular podcast topic. So why don't we talk about what we're talking about?
Oh gosh, you put me on the spot. The outline is in the back of my head because this is a conversation, but I definitely did a little bit of digging and thinking about what to talk about before this episode. And it's all about macros. Specifically, are they everything? Are they the end all be all to being fit, getting the body you want, etc.?
All right. So what do you think?
Well, I think the very first thing we need to think about before we actually get into this conversation is defining what macros actually are. And I know that's kind of silly, but I think it's important to really start things off and be like, okay, because some people might not even really understand. And obviously we know a lot about each macronutrient, but I think the only way to talk about that is to get started with the basics. Carbohydrates, which give you energy, the most easily digestible and usable source of energy that you can possibly get in. Fat, good for your endocrine system, good, slows down digestion, can be satiating for some. And in my opinion, you can actually overdo it on fat, where you should be getting in more carbohydrates. And then our favorite, Danny, protein, which you are able to use protein day of for your body's needs to perform and recover for muscle building and muscle repair purposes. And then afterwards, it becomes stored energy like anything else you get in for the day.
Okay, thank you for that. I don't know if protein is like my favorite. I just think that in our particular community, like in the vegan community, I just feel like it's often understated, the importance of protein, because everybody just wants to be like, oh, I don't even need protein. When, you do, well, one, yes, you do. Of course, everybody needs protein, but I get what people are saying. Like, I don't need to specifically focus on protein in order to get enough protein, which, yeah, true. But for people who want to build muscle or get leaner or lose weight and hang on to the muscle that they have, then protein is very important. But, even protein is not the be all end all of the macros. It's a pretty cool macro for a lot of reasons, but carbs and fat are pretty awesome too. And I know you mentioned like, oh, I think you can overdo it with fat and not get enough carbohydrates. I feel like I see more the opposite, where people are leaning really heavily on carbs and just not willing to eat fat at all. But regardless, they're all important, I guess, is the point.
Yeah, for sure. I am a little bit bitter over what has happened the past 20 years, or 15, I should say, because I haven't been in it that long, with the protein stuff in the plant-based world.
What does that mean?
I just am. Well, let me ask you a question. I mean, this is hypothetical because we only work with plant-based dieters or vegans. Do you feel like fitness fanatic, like people who are into fitness that are not vegan at all, do you feel like they get in enough protein on average when they start to like work out and really get into it? Do you feel like they have the same struggle that vegans do?
No, I guess. Not sure where you're going with this.
Well, that's my issue. I think when it comes to eating properly, when you're getting into fitness or when you're already into fitness, there's like excuses that are created when you have a plant-based diet or when you're vegan and you just don't want to get enough protein. And you start to make excuses, or you start to like reason with yourself, like, oh, I want to eat a certain kind of way, or protein's not that important, or blah, blah, blah. There's been so much. First of all, the dietary dogma has been out of control with protein. And I don't think it was anyone's fault per se, but it's true. It's been pervasive for the past 10 to 15 years in the vegan world. And that drives me crazy. And then the other issue is that at this point, regardless of that, we just have like our eating preferences or our beliefs about health in the vegan sphere. And I think we're missing the forest for the trees, and we just don't get the right amount of protein. And at that point, at what point does it just become behavioral, Danny? And it's no longer a belief. And all of a sudden you see people just not getting it enough. So yeah, for me, it's upsetting that
anybody watching this is about to find out why this is not usually a video podcast. I'm seeing myself like, oh no, people are going to see the faces. I'm making the faces out loud this time. Okay. So I'm going to totally disagree with you, I guess, because I think that when it comes to protein, I'm going to just talk about vegans, I guess, in general. I'm not worried about anybody's health. I can't even remember the last time that I met somebody who was eating so little protein that I was worried for their health. Like, you're going to be fine. Your blood work is going to be fine. Nothing bad is going to happen to you. Where I worry, I guess, and maybe worry is even too strong of a term, is when people say, I want to build muscle, I want to be leaner, I want to achieve XYZ physique, I'm not getting stronger in the gym. And then I look and they're eating 40, 50, 60 grams of protein. And then I'm like, again, nothing bad is going to happen to this person, right? But they're not going to achieve their goal that way. It's highly unlikely that if that is their eating pattern long term, that they are going to be able to achieve that goal. So really, it's like they're only hurting themselves, I guess. But you're not hurting yourself. It's not like you're going to end up in the hospital. But if you're trying to achieve a goal, then yeah, you need to eat more protein. It's more important then. Does that make sense?
It does. And I feel like I'm on the same page with you, Danny. What about fat? I feel like there are outliers that don't consume enough fat, but I don't know if I would consider it the rule. Like people wind up over consuming carbs versus fat.
Okay. So I don't know if you recall the 80-10-10 craze that swept the vegan community 10 years ago, 12 years ago. I don't even remember exactly when it was, but I am talking full blown craze where people were like feeling guilty if they weren't eating 80-10-10. And what 80-10-10 was, for those maybe newer to this community, I still hear it, like it's still out there. People still talk about it. It's 80% of your calories coming from carbohydrates, 10% of your calories coming from fats, 10% coming from protein. And I even heard this taken as far as like 95-5, like because everybody just has to one up the next person all the time. So obnoxious. And usually, but not always the 80% of the calories coming from carbohydrates was usually from fruit. Like this was a very fruit-based diet most of the time. I have certainly met people who like ate more potatoes or rice or whatever, but usually it was a fruit-based diet with virtually no fat and no protein. And that, in my opinion, like that, the fat portion of that has really stuck around, where I meet so many women who are eating like under 30 grams of fat and they're like terrified to add fat to their food. And on the one hand, like fats are the densest of all the macronutrients. They add up the fastest. It is so easy to add 200 or 300 calories of fat to your salad, like without even really thinking about it, with just a little bit of olive oil, for example. So I understand the sort of caution that people have around fat, but there's like a straight up fear that a lot of people, and I work with mostly women, but also it seems like it's predominantly women who are like terrified of having their fats over a certain amount.
I won't disagree with you there. When you frame it like that, it makes a lot of sense. I was thinking more logistically in terms of how much fat people are getting in terms of their fear of fat and the way that it makes them feel, then yes, I absolutely agree with that point, Danny. It is definitely a thing. But you have the other side of things where vegans aren't afraid to eat their carbs, which is kind of cool in my opinion, because carbohydrates are where it's at. Because think about it, you're constantly teaching your glycogen stores that they can be refueled real easily, and where they can't be accessed, your body can access food right away. And if, in my opinion, that is where the magic happens, because that's what athletes really need. They need to make sure that they get in their carbs. And I think we as a community have an advantage in that regard. Plus, arguably, you're going to get your most bang for your buck nutritionally out of carbohydrates. So I think that's actually a net positive of being vegan, as long as you can balance it out.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think that in general, vegans are less likely to be afraid to eat carbohydrates, but you know, there's a lot of carb fear too. A lot of people DM me and just say like, I don't know how to get my carbs low as a vegan, because a lot of people think like the baseline to reach their goals is that you have to eat low carb, you know, and you can overdo and underdo. That underdo isn't even a word, but you can overdo and underdo any of the three macros. You can eat too many carbs for your goal and also not enough. You can eat too much fat for your goals and also not enough. You can eat too much protein, which is a whole ass conversation. Yes, you can eat too much protein for your goals, and you can also eat not enough. So I understand that like people, human beings in general, really love a very straightforward solution, like black and white answer, like this good, this bad. And it's just not that way. And even on a podcast, I couldn't be like, well, everybody should eat this much of this and this much of this, because it's not everybody. There's variations from person to person to person. But in general, most people should be eating a pretty good balance of all three of the macronutrients. Hey everybody, we're interrupting this podcast to let you know that we have an upcoming 12-week fat loss challenge that's starting in less than 2 weeks. On August 28th, we will be beginning a new 12-week fat loss challenge, and we would really love it if you could come be a part of it. So in this challenge, you will get workouts delivered right to your app for either the home or the gym. You will have custom calculated macros designed by myself and our coaches to help you reach your fat loss goals in a sustainable way so you don't lose your mind while you're doing it. There's also over 80 video lessons delivered to you every single day. So not only are you getting the results, but you're also learning how and why we design our programs this way so that you can continue to reach your goals even after the program ends. We also have weekly live Zoom calls with the coaches, and one lucky winner who transforms their life the most in the time of this challenge is going to win 3 months of free one-on-one coaching
which can be life-changing if you use it appropriately. So if that sounds good to you, and if you want to work with some vegan coaches who aren't going to tell you to eat eggs or drink whey to reach your goals, please click the link in the show notes. Come join the upcoming 12-week vegan fat loss challenge. We would love to have you there.
Yeah, totally. And I think for the most part now, the straightaway simple solution on paper, what is the baseline on what you should be doing to balance out carbs, fats, and protein, I don't think there's any true mystery around that anymore. It's generally accepted, the science at least, that you try to get in the 0.8 to 1.2 grams of protein per pound of lean body mass. Am I saying that right, Danny?
0.8 to 1.2, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Correct. And then fat, if you really want, male or female, you want to get in a bare bones minimum of 30 and probably upwards of 40, especially if you're like going into pre-menopausal or post-menopausal. In age in general, it comes that much more important to just keep your fat a little bit higher. Your body's going to be less responsive biologically to what you do to stress out your endocrine system, when you're dieting down, especially. Yeah. And then carbohydrates, that's where you get the rest in. There are outliers all over the place for all kinds of reasons.
Sorry to interrupt you. It's very hard to not interrupt with Zoom because there's like this lag. But I just want to add on, I don't like to see women's fats below 40. I'll do it occasionally if I'm getting somebody ready for a bodybuilding competition, but it's temporary. I don't like to see it sub 40 on almost anybody. Occasionally I'll work with somebody who's 4'11" and 100 pounds, and maybe we're having a different conversation then, but most people are not 4'11" and 100 pounds. So, yeah. Anyway, continue. Sorry.
No, all there with you. And those are more of the outliers where the baseline where you always want to gravitate back toward if you're not dieting, obviously. I should have put that in. So thank you for that, Danny. That's where the baseline is. But there are all kinds of reasons why you can experiment with these numbers. Although I do still believe that the protein is the one thing where you should keep that tried and true right there all day, every day. Mm-hmm. Maybe if anything, have it just a smidgen higher for insurance's sake if you're going to be dieting down.
Yeah. And I think you can, I think you can have a range. I know for myself, I'm happy if I get anywhere in between like 110 grams of protein and like 160 grams of protein, which is a pretty big window. For me, 160 is probably overkill for me, honestly. But if I fall somewhere in that range, I'm pretty happy. If I start, first of all, I won't go above that by accident. That's not going to happen. But I could drop below it by accident, and then I make a conscious effort to kind of keep it there.
So you nailed this formula. You have the skill of tracking. You could arguably live your life like that because you're a machine and bottom line results driven. Obviously, I'm setting us up here for a clear recipe for disaster, meaning that even if you could be that person, why would you be that person? And this is, in my opinion, the perfect segue here to move the conversation over to like, are macros in fact everything just because they can get you results? And just because you're feeling differently about hitting them and tracking them and this and that. This is where the conversation gets interesting, in my opinion.
So I guess I don't know. No, of course. I guess it's a hard question to answer because like, are macros everything? That's like saying, is food everything? Is your diet that important when you're trying to reach a particular goal? Yeah. Yeah, it is. Are macros everything? Like when we say are macros everything, do we mean like following a specific set of macros to a T? Is that what we mean?
You tell me. I think it's open to interpretation because yes, you have to track in some sort of way to achieve your goals. And yes, you can also not track in some sort of way and just know what you need to do. But those tools and those skills exist for a reason, right? This is when you're trying to change your body. But what about when you're not trying to change your body in any sort of aggressive way, where you're not trying to take your body out of a state of balance to either bulk or to lean out? What do you do then? And I think that's where people can get a little fed up or a little hooked on macroing, and it's potentially not the answer, right? But then they go in the opposite direction. And we've talked about this ad nauseum, but we're going to talk about it at least one more time, that listening to your body is not always the solution, because you might feel like you're doing what you're doing. And sometimes you realize you're lying to yourself, and sometimes you don't realize you're lying to yourself. It's about like how your eating habits are and what balance of food you're getting in. And this is where I feel like macroing can definitely help, but it is not the solution. It is a tool, it is a skill. It's not the end all be all, and it is not everything.
Yeah. It is a tool. And I think it's a really, really, really valuable tool. Look, I wrote a book about it, and I still stand by this book. I think this book is super, super helpful, and it teaches people how to do exactly that. But I originally wrote that book in 2014. I've updated it a few times since then, but now I do recognize that, one, there are people who that is just not the best avenue for. There's a million ways to achieve a bodybuilding goal. And when I say bodybuilding, I don't mean competitive step on stage, win a trophy bodybuilding. I mean anybody who has a pursuit of building muscle or getting leaner and is like passionate about strength training. Like, you're a bodybuilder. And a lot of people say, oh, I'm not a bodybuilder. I don't want to be a bodybuilder. I just want to build my glutes and my shoulders and get a tighter waist. Like, honey, you're a bodybuilder. That's what bodybuilders do. Anybody who has a goal like that could get a lot of value from figuring out exactly how much they need to eat and then eating that amount. However, for some people, this is triggering to them for like disordered eating behavior. It's just like more numbers to focus on, which, we never want to push somebody in that kind of a direction. For other people, they are just like flat out not going to do it. They're not going to do it. So we need to find a different way. There is no way that is quite as precise. Flat out. There's no way, short of following a meal plan, which I find to be significantly more problematic in the long run, there is nothing as precise as learning how to sort of track your food and eat the right amount. But there are lots of other ways to do things. And I think we have a podcast we're recording going into depth about exactly that, what all the different ways are, their pros and cons. So we'll save diving into every single one of those for that episode. But yeah, there are definitely other ways. And for some people, there is a better way than just sticking to your macros.
What is the better way, Danny? What is the happy place in between eating healthfully, tracking things numerically, being firmly aware of what you want to do when you're a creature of habit, and like sticking to your guns? So like you're kind of in a meal plan, like in the back of your mind, but not actually writing it out. And then just having fun and knowing like when to let loose a little bit within reason. Like what is your I realize I'm asking an impossible question, so I apologize in advance.
Not only are you asking an impossible question, but I literally just said, we'll talk about that in that episode, not this one. But it is an impossible question because, there is not like, oh, what is the way? What is the better way? Because if you had asked me 10 years ago, what is the best way? I would say flexible dieting and nothing else. Like everything else is inferior to flexible dieting. And if everybody was just a robot, I would still stand by that statement. But we are not robots. We have histories and thoughts and behaviors and patterns, and that all need to be considered when choosing the best possible dietary approach for somebody. So there is no one answer because it's going to be different for everybody, which is pretty much always my answer to everything, is like, it's going to depend on the person and the situation. And that is still true, but we'll talk about these specific different ways in that episode in a few weeks.
Right, for sure. So, but there are other things outside of macros to consider. And I hate to use the word lifestyle because I don't want us to come across as, oh, just be happy, just have a nice, healthy, balanced lifestyle. Like, we're all about aggressive goals and we're all about hard lines and putting your head down and doing the work, doing what you need to do. But there's something to be said about setting up your lifestyle in a way where you have, like, where quality of life is taken into account, not just what you do in the gym and not just what you do in the kitchen and what you go grocery shopping for. And I think you can go too far in the opposite direction where it's like, well, I just want to live a happy life and have good quality of life. But then you turn around and you're absolutely miserable because you're not taking care of yourself. But it's that in-between place again, where it makes a difference. It really does make a difference when you can't have one without the other.
Yeah, I mean, that to me, that brings up like this thought of intuitive eating, which is a big movement, and rightfully so. I have a lot of respect for intuitive eating, like as a movement that is helping people learn to trust themselves. But much like I don't think flexible dieting is like the answer for 100% of people, I also don't think intuitive eating is the answer for 100% of people. The sort of concept behind intuitive eating, I mean, there's a lot to it. Like there is a lot to it, and I am super oversimplifying, and I might be missing bits and pieces here and there. I haven't read the book in a long, long time. But the gist is, if you listen to your body and give your body what it wants, especially in the beginning, in the learning phases, eventually your body is going to start craving and wanting things that are good for it. If you're really listening to your body, if you get really good at that connection, you'll know exactly what your body physically needs. You'll know what like your heart needs. You'll know what your energy needs are. You'll know when you're full enough to like stop eating. What a beautiful, wonderful concept, right? And for people that it works for, to be happy, healthy, have a good relationship with food and their body, I have nothing but good things to say. That said, I have also seen a lot of people who have worked really hard towards that goal and not gotten there. And I'm not even just talking about like getting in shape, because you'll hear a lot of people say like, oh, I really, really want to do intuitive eating, and I also have 20 pounds to lose, which those are opposing goals, right? Like if you are intuitive eating truly, then you are not thinking about the scale. There are some people who will do intuitive eating and will lose weight as a byproduct of getting good at listening to their body. There are some people who will do it and will gain weight as a byproduct of listening to their body. So the scale in your physique has nothing to do with intuitive eating. And it feels almost impossible based on the definitions of these things to have both of those goals at the same time. I still see people try to do it all the time. But there are a lot of principles about intuitive eating that I like. I like them a lot. There's lots of things in there. We talk about listening to your hunger cues and your fullness cues frequently on this podcast. We talk about working in foods that kind of like feed your soul and building around it. I like that. There's a lot of stuff I like about it. Can you still do some of those practices and also work towards physique goals? I think you can.
Yeah, but it takes work.
Oh yeah. Well, all of this takes work. Again, I go back to like humans just want easy answers, black or white, do this and don't do that. But none of it is like that. Like every single, listen to your body. Well, that sounds easy enough, doesn't it? Right? It's not. That's really, really hard to do for a lot of people. So, it's just, all of this is going to take work. If it didn't, I found myself saying this a lot this week to a lot of people. If it was easy, everybody would be doing it. If achieving the things that we talked about on this podcast were easy, everyone would be there. But the fact is, most people are not there. The vast majority of people have not achieved what they believe is like their ultimate fitness or physique goal. They're not there because it's not easy, because it's really a lot of work.
Right. And I think the work is a little more tangible when it comes to tracking, because you're like, okay, I can weigh, I can measure, I can put this number on a piece of paper, I can move said numbers, and it's comforting. Whereas the other work, you can't really see what's happening. But if you take a look back a year later, when you try to take off the training wheels and you realize the kind of work that you've done to just not be a straight numbers person when it comes to your eating habits, a straight counting person, when you take a look back at the work that has happened that you can't actually journal, you can't quantify, And sometimes you can surprise yourself about the kind of things that you've learned, and then you can learn to trust yourself some more. Like, wait a minute, I know I should be eating vegetables twice a day. Wait a minute, I know I should be eating whole foods more often than not. Wait a minute, like I know I can vary up my protein sources, and I know that I can go out and I'm not going to fly off the handle because that's just not what I want to do all the time. And if I do it once in a while, and you know when you're betraying yourself and when you're not doing it, and that can feel empowering and scary to get there. And sometimes you got to go back to tracking, but I think that's like the kind of knowledge and experience you can only gain by taking it there. And there's no shame in having to check yourself and having to check yourself with an accountability an accountability buddy or a coach, for example. Like that's, to me, that helps you get outside of your head and make sure that you're still staying true to yourself and your goals, as opposed to just being like, well, what's the point here? I'm not doing anything. I'm not doing the work. And also still realizing that you can, in fact, not have to feel like the thing is the fix. It is the macros. Those are everything. I always got to get back to that word else. It is learning about your body, learning about your habits, learning about your behavior, and making it work for you, as opposed to having to have something on a piece of paper or to have to resort to counting as the solution or the end all be all.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, you always have to consider the goal as well. If your goal is to get as shredded as you possibly can, I know it's a hard pill to swallow, but you're going to have to track your macros. You are going to have to track your macros
at some point.
Or you're going to have to eat the exact same thing every day. Those are your two options. I know which one I would pick. It's going to be the macros all day. But you know, if your goal is like, I just want to get in better shape, I want to have enough energy to go to the gym, you might not need to track your macros. You might be able to just focus on healthy habits, you know, and that might be enough to move the needle forward. Now, the closer you get to an extreme goal, the more precise you need to be. And when you need precision, macro tracking is so valuable. And even if you don't need precision, if you're like brand new to these kinds of goals, I still think there's value in learning your macros, learning what foods are high in which macro. There's a huge amount of value. A lot of people don't even know what a proper plate looks like. You know, when you start to learn, what does that look like? What does a balanced meal actually look like? What does it look like for me to have 25 grams of plant-based protein on a meal and then do that multiple times a day? People don't know. So even if bodybuilding or getting super shredded isn't your goal, there's still a lot of value in learning how to track your macros, how much food you generally need. But once you know that, you know it. Like, it's like riding a bike. You don't just forget what 25 grams of protein's worth of tofu looks like. Now you know that it's not like two little squares, you know, it's like a decent amount. So then you don't have to track so closely forever unless your goal does get quite extreme.
Exactly. And again, I can't stress this enough. There's no shame in using it as a tool for as long as you need to. And at some point you'll see that you're in the flow and you got your rhythm and you know how you're eating, as long as, like Danny said, you're not going after some sort of extreme goal. So it's tough because we have these kinds of conversations and we put this information out there and you never know how someone's going to take it and run with it. So it's like, we want to touch on all the points here for all the scenarios. It's important. It really is.
And sometimes, you know, I feel like 𝐶𝐿 and I, like, we're so cautious about trying really hard to not say something that could potentially push somebody over the edge. Like, we don't want to harm anybody ever. And when you're making a podcast and speaking to a broad audience of people with different goals and different histories, like, you do kind of have to tiptoe around certain things that you say. So just always, I guess kind of always keep that in mind when you're listening to us. Like, there might be, we certainly have much more specific answers for you if we knew anything about you specifically. But to a broad audience, we always want to be very careful to not say things like, well, You figure out your macros and you nail them to a T, my friend, because somebody is going to hear that and obsess over it and turn like macro counting into their new identity, where any day that they don't hit it, they feel like a failure. And then that starts to take over their life. Now that sounds very extreme. That stuff happens all the time. So I don't know why I went off on that little side tangent, but I think it's important. I don't know. Maybe it's not important.
Anything else you want to touch upon as far as macros not being everything and lifestyle or just different people's needs?
Well, I mean, I think we kind of touched, I can't remember if we talked about this in a podcast recently. I know I talked about it in a YouTube video recently, that if all you focus on is macros, then you are leaving a lot of important things about good, well-rounded nutrition on the table. You're leaving, you're not considering fiber or the colors of the fruits and vegetables that you're getting in, and therefore the micronutrients you're getting in, quality of your food, like meal timing, even like you're not considering any of those things if you're just hitting your macros by the end of the day. So there's more to, even though I think macros are super, super precise, there's actually more to it than just, hey, hit these numbers by the end of the day. So anyway, that's all I got. Got anything else?
Well, if I were to open up that door, I feel like we could get into a whole conversation about it. There's more detail there than I can possibly put out there inside of another minute or two. So yeah, we'll leave.
See, normally if we were sitting across from each other and it was just the microphone, I'd go, and that's how we know the discussion is over. But now you have to hear us decide if the discussion is over.
I think so. I think that's pretty much all that's worth talking about with this episode for now, but I'm super curious to hear your thoughts and what you got out of this episode. And who knows, Danny, what we talked about today, we can wind up potentially having some new episodes with different topics to talk about. So yeah, no, this was a really interesting one. I'm glad that we had this conversation.
And when he says you, he doesn't mean me. He means you guys listening.
Correct.
Just clarifying. All right. Moving on to our question and answer segment. Here we go, 𝐬𝐿𝐫𝐞. When losing weight, how does your body know to use the stored fat and not muscle? I work out regularly to build muscle, but I also want to shed the stored fat.
Your body doesn't know the difference, and your body will catabolize your muscle. That's the bottom line, unless you get the right amount of protein in. That's straight away, simple, straightforward answer. If you do not, bodies don't care where they pull it from. You could think about the fact that you're not supposed to hold on to muscle. It serves no biological purpose whatsoever.
To have a lot of muscle.
Correct. Mm-hmm. Correct. It's actually metabolically taxing on your system to have muscle. You have to burn calories just to have muscle.
To have a lot of muscle. Everybody should have muscle. It's very good for you. He's talking about like bodybuilder levels of muscle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But even in general, from a biological based standpoint, if you're dieting down, if you want to get leaner and not smaller, your body doesn't know the difference of what your personal wants are. It's going to get rid of what it has to get rid of because you're not giving your body nourishment. Mm-hmm. So it'll shave off muscle right away, whether you have a lot or a little, Danny. It's going to take from wherever it could take from.
But keeping your protein high will absolutely help you hang on to it as much as possible. And also not eating in too big of a deficit. Because if you're eating in too big of a deficit, there's no amount of protein you're going to be able to eat that is going to stop all muscle wasting. But if you're in a moderate deficit with enough protein and strength training, that is key also. You can't just eat protein and not strength train. You have to do all of these things in order for the weight that you lose to not be muscle and be much higher percentage of body fat.
Strength train just as hard. Focus on your recovery, manage your stress, because when you diet down, you become even more fatigued and it becomes even harder to put out the same level of energy when your body's in energy conservation mode and you're getting in less food. You have to train even harder. So that creates stress in your system. And now you have to focus on recovery even more than you normally would. Because if you don't, and that fatigue and that stress catches up with you, guess what happens? you have a harder time training hard, and you have a harder time holding on to that muscle. And that's, and even if you were able to hold on to the muscle, like your finished look wouldn't be the same because you weren't able to train as well or recover as well. I got a question for you, Danny. Or do I? Is it?
You do.
Yeah? Oh, yeah. Well, I got it. Okay. All right. Okay, Danny, thoughts on waist trainers? When losing weight, how does your body know?
No, that is the question I just asked you. Just the first one. Those are the two questions.
Wait, what? I'm confused. You didn't ask me
the
about waist trainers.
The question for me is, what are my thoughts on waist trainers?
Yeah,
so I hate them.
Sorry.
I don't like waist trainers at all. I think they are absolutely silly, honestly. 100%. I thought we kind of like squashed this idea in 2015, but boy, are they making a comeback right now. Waist trainers everywhere. So waist trainers are basically like corsets for the gym. They're usually made out of some kind of like rubber, or sometimes they have like a nylon or spandexy vibe to them. Lots and lots of hooks, like iron hook closures all the way down, sometimes like 30 hooks. And they are very, very tight. And the idea is you wear this waist trainer and you do all of your workouts in it. And over time, your waist will get smaller. Now, your waist will appear smaller when you take this off, usually for a few reasons. One, you just squished the crap out of it for sometimes days. Like people wear these for 12 or 16 hours a day. They don't just work out in them. They wear them all the time. You just squished the heck out of it. So of course it's going to look like that. Like you ever sleep on your pillowcase and wake up with lines everywhere? It's the same thing, but it's your whole waist. But the other reason is because they're made out of rubber, you sweat a lot when you wear them. And the sweat is coming from your midsection, which first of all, ew. Can you think wearing a rubber suit and sweating your ass off? I can't think of anything less pleasant than that. But the water is coming from your waist. So when you take it off, you've lost water in your waist. So it looks smaller. Cool, right? Well, no, because you're going to go drink a glass of water. It's just going to replenish itself because we regulate our water minute to minute. Now, over the long term of that's just like, a day, right? Over the long term of wearing this, they're so tight that they can actually stop your core from properly activating. So it kind of forces you into good posture, basically from your hip all the way up to like basically the bottom of your breasts. Like they're tall. It's not like a little belt or anything. And you can't correctly contract your core with a waist trainer on. Over time, those muscles are going to get weaker, which yes, means they will get smaller, but is that really the way you want your waist to get smaller, by losing muscle in your midsection? Think about it. If I had a cast on my arm for 6 or 8 weeks, when we took that cast off, my arm would be smaller because the muscle in there would have atrophied. What do you think happens when you put this waist trainer on your midsection? Now, I'm a big fan of not overtraining your core. You guys have heard me say that if you want a small waist, don't train your core to death. But we do need some core strength. We need some core muscle. And if you've ever looked at there's still a pretty large corset community today. If you look at some people in the corset community, some of them have little 10-inch waists. 10-inch waists. My arm is bigger than 10 inches. There's no muscle in that particular spot. How could there be? But then when you see it, and if that's somebody's aesthetic and that's what they want to work towards, no shade, like do what you want. It's your body. I don't care. But that doesn't look particularly safe to me. That doesn't look like you're going to have a particularly stable spine in and out of the gym in general. So that was long, but that's my answer. Also, dudes are wearing it now too.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not interested. I'm intrigued. I'm curious, but it doesn't seem like there's any real value to it whatsoever. And the risks are all over the place. It just seems like just a mistake.
Just the risk of getting a rash sounds terrible. And I should add, I think I mentioned this on the last podcast. I actually own one. because when I had my skin removal surgery on my lower abdominal, I had to wear one as like a compression garment after my surgery for a couple weeks because you are so swollen. So again, it pushes the fluid out of that area, the water we just talked about. But also for people who have had surgery in their muscles in their abdominals, which I didn't, it helps hold the muscle tissue. Like if you had like an umbilical hernia and had to have surgery on it, you would wear something like a waist trainer afterwards to like hold the tissue together so it could heal together properly. So I have experience wearing them and it's awful. That's all.
All right, everybody. Thanks so much for tuning in to another episode of Vegan Proteins Muscles by Brussels Radio. Stay in touch with us on socials at Vegan Proteins and at Muscles by Brussels. Hit the contact button on VeganProteins.com. You'll always get a video response from one of the coaches here. Once again, my name is 𝐬𝐮𝐬𝐫𝐽.
And I'm Danny.
We'll talk to you soon.